Well, here we are, step number 3 of the business format system, which is the presentation. Sometimes it's called the corporate overview, sometimes it's called the business presentation meeting, but it is undoubtedly the nucleus of building our business. Everything builds off of our business presentation meeting and our corporate overview. Now, you may have your meeting in your office on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night perhaps, and there's usually 2 a week, one during the week and one on the weekends. It's so important that you as associates get to every single meeting you could possibly make. It only takes about 3 days of being out there in the big, cruel, negative world for you to lose your inspiration, your goals, your motivation, the reason you're with this business in the first place, selling out and committing. Now, I want to challenge you. Your goal is to get guests to see the corporate overview. So you're going to invite them down to the office for the corporate overview. If they can't make it, then you default to setting a one-on-one overview of our company and presentation during the day in the office. If somebody can't make that either, then you default to doing a one-on-one home presentation where you go out to their home and you go and show them our same corporate overview using the flip chart at their home. Now, there's some semantics that you need to understand that surround the corporate overview evening. First is something called MoZone. MoZone stands for Momentum Zone, and it's the half hour before the meeting actually begins. And this is a time where you build momentum for the meeting, you take people's nervousness and guards and bring them down, make them feel welcome and comfortable as guests, and there's an exact way to do this. First and foremost, if you are an associate, you need to be there 1/2 hour before people are invited to the meeting. So if the meeting is supposedly said to start at 7 o'clock, you need to be at your office at 6:30 in business attire, positive mental attitude, ready to go. You need to be there early because some guests may actually come early, and you're part of creating this energetic atmosphere that's going to actually make people feel comfortable. They say if you have a good MoZone, that the presentation, it has less of an impact. When they go home at the end of the night, it's the actual people that they met during MoZone that they remember. So when you come there, there's a couple semantics. One, you come on in and put on a name tag. You'd either have a gold name badge if you're somebody who's been around for a while, or perhaps you'd have a blue sticky name tag. Now, the guests are going to be in red, and there's going to be a sign-in sheet. There should be somebody in a table set up aside where the guests come in, go to the sign-up table, and register. They put their name, who invited them, their phone number, so that we can contact them later. Also, it lets us know who invited them down as a guest, and we can write their name in smaller print beneath the name, their name, so that as you walk up during MoZone and introduce yourself to them, you're not asking them who invited you. There's nothing less inviting than asking someone who invited you. Could you imagine? But that happens sometimes. If the name is underneath, you could say, oh, I see you're a guest of Lou's. How do you happen to know Lou? And you start the conversation there. A few things having to do with MoZone also is that you have to do something called FORM, which is an acronym for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Message. The message is the presentation. You ask them about their family. Are you married? Do you have children? How many children? How long have you been married? You ask questions surrounding their family. Their occupation. What do you do for a living? How do you enjoy it? How long have you been there? What got you started in that career path? And then you have the recreation. So when you're not working, what do you do? And you're having a conversation about that. Key points to remember during MoZone. Stay about an arm's distance away as you're talking to somebody. Don't invade their private space by getting up too close, and don't stand in a defensive posture too far away. You want to stand an arm's distance away, look at them in the eyes, concentrate on your conversation, and be inviting. Listen. God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth. We're supposed to use them in that proportion, but most people violate that on a regular basis. So you're asking these questions. You have also a rule: you never have more than 2 associates around any one guest. Imagine being a new person in a new office and being totally surrounded by associates. It could be pretty nerve-wracking. So you don't want more than 2 associates in front of a guest. You're not supposed to spend more than 2 to 3 minutes MoZoning with this person, getting to know them, before somebody comes behind you and relieves you from your duty. At that point, you're going to share with them, you're going to make the introduction, you're going to introduce the guest to the other associate. You're going to say, Frank, this happens to be Jim. Jim's one of our senior associates in the office. He's one of the trainers and actually helps people go out into the field and understand and learn our company. And then you'd say, this is Frank. He's a guest of Lou's. They know each other from high school. He's married. He has 2 kids. He lives over in in the Chicagoland area. He works for Motorola. He's been there for 6 years. So you're going to make the connection, and then you're going to introduce them, and you're going to leave. And you have to remember what the person said to you so that you can report to them so they don't ask the same questions. One big mistake in Mozone is to ask the same question of the person over and over again. Who invited you? What do you do for a living? Are you married? You want to take the questions deep. So you have 3 children. How old are they? What kind of sports are they in? Also during Mozone, you're looking for people to match up with similar backgrounds. If Frank happens to be in computer science, you happen to have someone in your office, maybe her name's Lisa, and she's also in computer science. You want to make sure they meet during Mozone so that they can answer one of the major questions people have, which is, can I really do this? Mozone is an important part of the meeting. It lasts 30 minutes. So actually, if you're an associate, you're there at 6:30. Mozone starts from 6:45 and goes till 7:15, and that after 7:15, the meeting actually starts. And somebody gets up and does something that we refer to as breaking the floor. They stand up in front of everybody. The Mozone music shuts off. You should have some music going on in the background. And the music shuts down, and you get everyone's attention. And somebody introduces the company, something like this. Hello, everybody. May I have your attention, please? My name's Jeff Levittan. I'd like to welcome you down to our office tonight. The name of our firm is World Financial Group, more commonly referred to as WFG. We're headquartered in Duluth, Georgia, and we're rapidly expanding throughout the Chicagoland area. And because of that, we're looking for new people to possibly become affiliated with our company. I want to let you know we're not making any monumental decisions tonight, so you could just sit back and relax and listen to our company's story. If we're both intrigued with one another, we can get together afterward at a later time and sit down and have a discussion where to take this thing one way or another. Is that fair enough? Is that a good place to start? Well, let's go ahead and get started. And then that person's going to introduce the person who's going to be going over the corporate overview. And they say, we're in a fortunate position tonight. I get to introduce one of our senior leaders in our office who's going to be going over the first part of the company's overview. He lives right here in the Chicagoland area. He's a father of 4. He's served our country in the military. Please help me welcome up Steve Doucette. And then they bring up the person who's going to go over the first part or the entire company overview. At this point, it's very important to set the precedent for the entire meeting. And he's going to answer the 3 major questions that every presentation must answer. Number 1, are these good people doing good things for other people? Number 2, is there money being made here? And then the most important of all the questions is, can I do this? We're attracting people from all different backgrounds, and the number 1 presiding question in their mind is, can I really do this with my background? So the person getting up starts with that. I had 3 questions in my mind when I was down here for the first time, meeting so many people. 1, were these good people doing good things for other people? Secondly, was there money to be made here? And third, can I do this? Those questions and many more will be answered shortly in our corporate overview. So if you're a guest, you're down here for the first time, you have a red name tag on your lapel, please follow me into the adjoining room where we're going to go over the company overview. And then for those of you that are associates, you stay here for some professional training, and then you break. And then one group goes off in one room, and the other group stays in the other for our different training classes. Now, as the meeting starts, there's a certain way to go over the presentation. What's most important to realize is that on your presentation night, you have 3 main objectives. Number 1, the most important objective of your corporate overview evening is to resell the power of our opportunity to the existing associates. Everyone thinks the presentation night is all about the guests. It's not. It's about reselling the great power of our opportunity to the existing associates. Number 2, it's to teach them how to sell the business opportunity to other people. And then third on the list of importance and priorities is to show the power of our opportunity with our company to the new guests. So then the most powerful speaker, the most articulate person, is going to go over the corporate overview. They're going to get up and there's the chart. Now, most times you're going to want this presentation to be given from a laptop computer and a projector. But if you happen to not have the budget for that in your office, you could certainly use color slides and use an overhead projector that way. But you have to use the pre-approved company presentation, which I'm going to go through the psychology of giving the presentation now. If you would take a look at the presentation, there's several slides and you need to keep a quick pace going through it. You have to realize that at this time of night, people have have usually driven through traffic. They had a long day at work. Many of them haven't eaten dinner, and they're sitting down here to see this corporate overview. Their biggest question is, all right, what's this about? It literally takes the first 4 or 5 slides before somebody even starts to settle in and really pay attention. Therefore, as you're going through the first few slides, you should move quickly through them and just give the information that's on the slides. Don't get too in detail. Don't explain too much. You tell them who we are, who we're backed by, and you're going to go through the slide line by line. You're not going to get fancy. You're not going to put in personal stories. You're just going to go through who we are. It's going to tell them that we're an independent company, that we're widely diversified, that we're self-employed associates, and it's going to go on through who our parent company is. World Financial Group is a member of the Aegon Group. This is a big credibility slide. This is where you'd say a little bit about Aegon and who they are, that their revenues back in 2002 were over $16 billion. And if you can see, these are some of the other subsidiaries that Aegon has, more household names. And the next slide actually goes a little bit further into that. Talks about the different products and the different services that we offer, a wide array of different products and services, not just a one-trick pony, not just a one-product type company. And then we get to the following slide. And the following slide is a great credibility piece also. It talks about the vast array of companies that we are affiliated with. We market the products of these big-name companies that most people recognize just by their logos, if not also their names. These are the companies that advertise. They're the ones that give us credibility just by our affiliation with them. Then you're going to develop the need. You're going to start to talk a little bit about the problems out there, that we're out there helping people who want to help themselves. Right there, that statement alone tells them that this isn't a get-rich-quick thing, that we can't help everybody. Somebody has to have the desire to reach out, to put forth some effort, to make some commitments before we can even begin to help them. It also lets them know that we're reaching out to individuals and families who have normally been overlooked by the traditional financial services industry. And this is where you start to develop our uniqueness as a company. You develop the fact that most financial service companies out there focus on the top 3% of the earners in the country, and we focus on the other 97% that's often overlooked. And that we talk about education being our basis that we go by. We're not out there just trying to sell a product or make a sale. We're out there trying to educate people and make a difference through that venue. Also, we talk about some of the basic challenges in our economy, staggering consumer debt. We talk about poor savings habits, alarming lack of education about financial fundamentals, most people living dangerously above our means. It's very important as you're going through the corporate overview that you look at the name tags of the people and call on them. Now, you don't ask them questions that they have to think about and answer. You ask them rhetorical questions, such as, don't we all know somebody who's living dangerously above their means? How many of you know somebody who probably doesn't have sufficient insurance protection? Do you know anybody who has poor savings habits? And you're going to be directing questions like that because that'll draw them in. And every time you call on their name, it draws them in a little bit more. Then you're going to develop even more of the need. Most people ask themselves, don't they, Jim, will I ever be able to retire? How will I even be able to start saving and investing? I don't know how to do that. Will I ever be able to buy a home? When should I refinance my home, Lou? People ask themselves that question all the time, don't they? How can I protect my family? You're asking these questions and you're developing that need, and you're starting to draw them in by calling their names and talking to them in a conversational tone. You're not speaking at them. You're not trying to win an award, giving the best speech they've ever heard. You're out there talking to them in a conversational manner. And then we get into our solution. This is when you're going to actually start to develop a little bit more of the picture of what we do. And I like to use this slide at this point to develop it a little bit more. I say it's amazing that people get up every day and they go to work from age 16 to 60 for one major reason, to earn a paycheck. But some people don't stop for 5 to 10 hours their entire life to learn what to do with the paycheck. And it's amazing, and most people derail their train and it never gets to that financial destination and station called retirement the way they want to. So what we've done as a company is come up with a 6-step approach to planning out somebody's financial future. It's called our financial strategy, and it sounds a little bit like this. Step number 1, increasing cash flow. With that point alone, we start to take a look at the 2 components of cash flow, how much money you have coming in and how much money you have going out. Now, we don't think that anybody has a money problem that making a whole bunch more money couldn't solve, and that may be one reason you're down here tonight, is to find out how to make additional income. On the back side of that equation is spending too much. I'm sure none of you do that, but we all probably know somebody who overspends, don't we? And most people don't think they have any money left over at the end of the month. But I was challenged a long time ago to make a written budget and actually write down everything I spend my money on to the detail for a 30-day period of time. And at the end of the 30-day period of time, I had found that I actually had $400 to $500 extra dollars left in my own budget. Now, as you see, I'm starting to incorporate personal stories into the presentation. Step number 2 is to manage our debt. Consolidate it, eliminate it, and just get rid of it once and for all. How many of you, by show of hands, know somebody who's in debt right now? Can I see? Yeah. How many of you, it seems like everyone you know is in debt? Sure. And that's a big challenge. We've been learning how to get into debt since we were this tall. But who is really teaching people how to get out of debt? We've got a couple programs with our firm that literally teach people how to accelerate the time frame it takes for them to get out of debt. We've actually been able to get people out of debt in half their normal time within their same current budget status. And then the next slide you go into after the first 2 steps talks a little bit about people's largest asset being their house, and that how they could possibly utilize their house through our affiliate broker program and using a mortgage or a refinancing of a mortgage possibly to get rid of their junk debt. This is where you differentiate high interest rate, non-tax deductible debt and possibly bring it to a refinancing situation on the home, where they may be able to, if they qualify, refinance their home, shift some of their debt down to a lower interest rate that's tax deductible instead of that high interest rate credit card debt that's not, as one of our strategies to help people get out of debt. The next slide goes into step number 3, creating an emergency fund. We all know that we're supposed to have 3 to 6 months of our income liquid set aside in case an emergency comes up. Well, how many people really have that these days? Or do most people use their credit cards when emergencies come up? That's what people tell me. They say, Jeff, well, I only use that for unexpected occurrences. Well, the last I could tell, my entire life was made up of unexpected occurrences, one after another. Therefore, if I don't have an emergency fund, then that emergency goes on my credit card, which then puts me in too much debt. And if it's financed at 18 to 22% like credit cards are, then it crimps my cash flow. Do you see how all these things are interrelated? That's why you can't just take care of one area. You have to look at the entire picture. Step number 4, proper protection. These are all the insurances that are out there. What's interesting about insurance companies is that there's hundreds of companies out there offering very similar products at very different prices. And if you ever actually studied the industry, some companies literally charge double what other companies do for the same coverage. And then some coverages, if you really look into the details, some of them are like rock solid concrete, wonderful coverage, while others look like Swiss cheese. The question really is, which one do you have? Do you have the concrete coverage or the Swiss cheese coverage? The double expensive or half as expensive insurance? That's why we think someone needs to have an analysis done in their insurance program and make sure that they're set up properly. And that's another step in our strategy that we do for people. Number 5, and I think this is developing proper asset allocation and accumulation. And what we want to basically do in step number 5 is get to retirement. How many of you like to retire someday by show of hands? Most people raise their hands, they'd like to retire. And I say, well, what is retirement exactly? How would you define it? Most people would define retirement as being age 60, being age 65, but really it has nothing to do with age. It has everything to do with where your income comes from. Do you have active income or passive income? Active income is from performing the activity of going to work. Your company provides the activity of paying you. If you stop your activity, they do what? They stop theirs. Passive income means you have a lump sum of money sitting somewhere generating an interest rate that you can live off of and maintain the lifestyle you've grown accustomed to. Or you have rental property throwing off rents that you can live off of comfortably. The big question is, how do you build that nest egg, and what challenges are there towards that wealth accumulation? And here's the big challenges. Number 1 is inflation. Inflation is one of the biggest challenges that people have. Cost of everything keeps going up, doesn't it? Anybody buy a car recently or shopping for a car? What's the average price of a car going for nowadays? And then someone's going to say 18,000. Someone will say 30, and I'll say, well, you have really good taste, because actually the average price of an automobile is close to about $20,000. Do you know what it was just 20 years ago? And then somebody a little bit older usually will step up and say about $5,000, and I'll say, that's right. That means it went from 5 to 20 in the last 20 years. Does that mean the next 20 years it'll go up another 4 times, that the average price of a car may be $80,000 after the next 20-year interval? We don't know, but it could be. And how scary would that be for an average car? We're not talking Mercedes-Benz or BMW. We're talking Ford Taurus, cloth interior, roll down the window. That's what we're talking about, $80,000. How'd you like to get a couple of those for your kids when they graduate college? How about the average price of a house? This is all about that inflation, our money being devalued every single year and buying less. The average price of a house nationwide right now, I recently saw in a report, this is not confirmed, but it's around $170,000. Do you know what it was 20 years ago? About $40,000. So that's gone up 4 times. Does that mean the average house 20 years from now is going to be about $700,000? I'm not talking for a mansion. I'm talking about 3 bedrooms, 2 baths on a lot. Do you know there's neighborhoods right now all across this country where housing already costs that much? Now, the problem with retirement is if you want to retire in 20 years and right now you're living off $50,000 a year, a lot of people are building their entire retirement plan around generating $50,000 a year for retirement. They might need 3 to 4 times that amount in 20 years to be able to buy and maintain the lifestyle they've grown accustomed to. So most people are undershooting that big number because they're not factoring in inflation. Therefore, saving money is not enough. It needs to outpace inflation. And that's the least of our worries in that category of building a nest egg. The bigger worry is our taxes. It's our taxes, folks. It's the single biggest expense we're going to have our entire life. If you think about it for a minute, most people would say it's their car. Most people would say it's their mortgage. But aren't we going to pay our house off in 30 years? Won't you pay any car off in about 5 years? Let me ask you this question. When do you pay taxes off completely? That's right, never. You don't ever pay them off. Literally, about 1/3 of your income is gone every single year, your entire life. And if you still end up wealthy and die, they'll come on in with estate taxes and could take up to 50% more in estate taxes. So we have this big tax challenge. And then when we buy something, what do they add on the price of everything we buy? Sales tax. What if you invest money and it grows in value? What do you owe on that growth? You owe taxes in the form of capital gains tax. And those are the ones you see that are predominant. But what about our property tax? What about our city tax that we have? Do you ever look at your cell phone bills? You have $30 worth of calls and $40 worth of taxes and fees. There are taxes on top of taxes on top of taxes. Our single biggest expense is taxes. And based upon some studies, they say that most Americans overpay in taxes right now. And the way that they know that is because we were founded by entrepreneurs over a couple hundred years ago, this country. Our tax code we live under was written by entrepreneurs, and most of the legal loopholes allowing you to reduce your taxes manually are for self-employed people, but most people aren't self-employed. Most people are W-2'd employees for major corporations, and they don't get to take advantage of write-offs and tax deductions because they don't own a business. Statistically speaking, they say almost every American, based upon our tax code, should have some sort of self-employment or side business for tax advantage purposes, but most don't. Wouldn't it be great if a company came by and showed you how to outpace inflation and minimize taxation? That's one of the things we do in our financial strategy. And then step number 7 is estate planning and planning out your estate. How many of you would like to end up wealthy in this lifetime? Can I see by show of hands? Yeah, most people would love to end up wealthy. But that brings about a whole bunch more challenges also. It's one thing in this country to build wealth and create wealth. It's a whole other thing to keep it. And that's another challenge. And that's why we need to own things, not all in our own name, but once you become wealthy, in trusts. Trusts need to be set up so that you can't be sued for everything that you spent a lifetime building. Don't we live in a sue-happy society? Everybody's suing everybody. I may sue some of you after you leave today. Now, I know you think that's funny, and if you were broke, you probably wouldn't care. But if you had a lot of money, you'd be on the phone with your attorney telling them to protect yourself because some crazy guy is going to try and sue you. And that's why once you end up wealthy, you need to protect yourself. You need to protect yourself from estate taxes. You need to protect yourself from lawsuits. And that's the last piece of the puzzle. Now, there's a lot of companies out there that give advice in these financial areas, but a lot of those companies charge for it. They charge somewhere in the ballpark of $500 to $1,500 for that advice. And we realize that most of the people who need that advice aren't getting it. They aren't willing to spend $500. They don't think they have enough money to need a professional. Therefore, they don't ever get the help that they really need. So we realized if we were going to be crusaders and we were going to help out middle America, we needed to bring that price down. We brought the price down to $0. Is that more affordable? Literally, at no cost, we will sit down with an individual, a family, or a small business and give them advice in those 6 areas. We'll spend a few hours with them. We won't charge them anything. There's no obligation. If they want to implement one of our strategies to either reduce their taxes, start a college fund for their kids, improve their insurance program that they have, maybe roll over that old 401k, implement any of our programs, then we'll place that business with one of the large firms that you've already heard of, and those companies will pay us. We do get paid for what we do, just not directly from our clients. And therefore, since we give them a great value and don't charge them for that education, they tell all their friends about us, and 95% of our business, somewhere around there, depending on which office you're out of, comes through referrals. That's where our business comes from. Most of our associates don't do any cold calling at all, and it's not our strategy. Doesn't that sound better? Now take a look at our philosophy on investing. Here's the 7 steps or points in our philosophy and financial fundamentals that our company believes in. Number 1, we believe in professional money management. Most people lack the time, the temperament, and the training to do their own investing. Number 2, we believe in wide diversification. Never put all your eggs in one basket. Number 3, we believe in the philosophy of dollar cost averaging. That's picking out about the most amount you can save every month and putting it into an investment on the same date every single month. Therefore, if the markets happen to be down, then you're buying more shares at a lower price. If the markets happen to be up, you buy less of it when it's expensive. And after you repeat that month after month, year after year, that philosophy has been proven to work out as a great strategy. It's been said that it's time in the market, not timing of the market, that works out better for investing long term, which brings me to step number 4, long-term thinking. You could take a look at the stock market and the history of it, and you can't find a period of a solid 20-year period where the markets have been down for a period of an entire continuous 20 years. And that's why we believe people need to have a long-term thinking and philosophy. Number 5, tax advantages. We've talked a little bit about that before, but you need to search out and seek tax advantages. Number 6, protection. What would it mean to be saving all this money for retirement and then have one health issue but not be covered by health insurance and have all your money wiped out and end up bankrupt? Or get in one car accident and not be properly insured. We know that most people in this country are underinsured and they need proper protection. And then number 7, goals and objectives. How can you ever reach a destination when you can't define where it is you're going? You need a map, but you need to know where you're going. This slide right here is the major slide and why I'm in the company today. It's called the Rule of 72. How many of you have heard of the Rule of 72 before? How many of you have heard of Albert Einstein before? He called this the 8th wonder of the world, the law of compounding interest. And what it simply shows is if you take the number 72 and divide it by the interest rate that your money is growing at, the answer is how long it takes for your money to double at that interest rate. So if you take a look here at what $10,000 would do growing at 4% return, well, 72 divided by 4 is 18, which means it would double every 18 years. Therefore, at age from 29 to age 65, it would double 2 times, and your $10,000 would turn into $40,000. Now, I always thought, well, if you got 8% instead of 4, you'd have 80 instead of 40, but that's not so. There's compounding of interest. Actually, at 8%, it doubles 2 more times, and that same $10,000 over the same period of time is now worth $160,000. Now, let me ask you, just a little quick pop quiz. How many of you would rather have $160,000 at age 65 instead of $40,000? Yeah, sure, most everybody would. Then why is it that so many people have their money sitting in accounts earning 4% or less? Because they do. I'll tell you why. It's because they don't know any better. They don't know where to go and get the higher interest rates. And we fear that which we don't know. And because people fear it, they avoid it, and they just go safe. But the problem is that's not necessarily safety. There is risk at low interest rates. It's called inflation risk. At the higher interest rates, you have market risk. But there's risk in both places. The challenge really is this whole thing can work against you too. If you have debt on credit cards, what kind of interest rates are credit cards charging us? 18%, 20, 22 maybe? At 18, think about this, 72 divided by 18 is 4. That means our debt on a credit card essentially is doubling every 4 years. So if our credit card debt is doubling every 4 years, yet our savings is doubling every 18, is it any wonder why people are retiring broke in this country? Folks, that's a division problem. We learned division back in 3rd grade. Why didn't they teach us the rule of 72 in 3rd grade? I'll tell you why. Because the major institutions out there that are making so much money off people not knowing this don't want us to know. And that's why our company, Crusading for Middle America, is going to teach this to as many families as we can. This slide explains tax advantages and the fact that really saving money is not enough. This takes 2 different scenarios. One scenario, somebody gets a low interest rate, low rate of return, no tax advantages. On the other side of the chart shows somebody who finds a little higher interest rate with tax advantages and what the difference is. In both scenarios, you have somebody saving $5,000 a year for a 30-year period of time. If you look all the way at one end of the chart, they're getting 3% return, no tax advantages. That means the growth is taxable, the usage is taxable, and if you were to have that money sitting there over 30 years, you'd end up with $212,000 in that account, and you'd be able to live, the interest that it would generate after taxes would be around $4,500. Couldn't really live on that, could you? If you look at the other end of the chart, same money, same period of time, 6% rate of return with some tax advantages. Now your account grows to over $400,000 and you get to pull out over $25,000 a year. Big difference? I think that makes all the difference in the world. And then there's the high cost of waiting. Most people don't start saving soon enough. If you take a look at this chart, if you were able to average 6% tax deferred and you had a retirement goal of $500,000 and you had 40 years until retirement, it would cost less than $250 a month and you would end up with $500,000 at retirement. But most people who are 40 years out from retirement, let's say they're 20 years old and want to retire at 60, they're not thinking of retirement savings, are they? They're thinking about having fun, looking good, retirement savings for their grandparents, even though less than $10 a day would set them up with $500,000 by retirement. Then they turn age 25, they're falling in love, and they're saving for their wedding instead of retirement. Then they start saving for their house at age 30 instead of retirement. Then they start having children and saving for their college and raising them. And then I finally go into their home at age 50 with 10 years left for retirement, and I sit down with them and they have the same $500,000 goal, and I say, well, let me see your portfolio. And they say, well, that's why you're here, so that we can get started saving for retirement. And I'm the bearer of bad news, and I'm the one who has to tell them that it's going to take over $3,000 a month every single month for the next 10 years to hit the same goal that they could have done for less than $10 a day. And they look at me with stars in their eyes, and they say, how can we possibly do that? We can only afford maybe a few $100s a month. And then I have to have that unbearable discussion as to how long into their 70s or 80s they're going to need to work to be able to retire, if ever they'll be able to retire, because they waited too long. Folks, I talked to somebody really wise and really wealthy one time, and they said, Jeff, wealthy people save their money and spend what's left. Poor people spend their money and save what's left. We can spend up to everything we make. Savings have got to be first, and we're usually not saving enough. And those basically are 6 steps, everybody. And then we get into your options. And here's where you tell your personal story. Option number 1 is to become a client. If you are totally satisfied with your current career, your discretionary income is wonderful, you would never want to work anywhere else, you may just consider becoming a client. Take a look at a financial strategy, sit down with one of our associates. If you already have somebody, maybe get a second opinion. It makes sense if it doesn't cost anything, doesn't it? That's what I did. Several years back when I sat down in my first overview, I knew that I needed some financial advice and I wanted to become a client. I told the person giving the meeting, though, that he probably wouldn't want to come sit down with me because I was broke. And I don't know if he'd want to come to my little junky apartment and tell me that I'm broke because I already know it. And he said, that's what we do. We help educate people. Maybe I can show you a way to get out of debt. So I came over to my house, sat down with me for 2 hours, and mapped out a path for me to get out of debt. And what I was so impressed by, from the company was that the gentleman spent time with me, and none of the other big companies would have ever considered. I wasn't the target market, you see, for any of the other big financial companies. And I was on track to be out of debt in about 18 years. And after he was done with me, I was going to be totally out of debt in 6 years. He also got me started saving on a little program, nothing major, little $50 a month investment. But I'll tell you what, it started me in the disciplined habit of saving money when I was overspending at all times. And when I was done with the appointment, I said, that was fantastic. I appreciate it so much. Would you mind helping out my brother? He's a year and a half older than I am, and he's in worse shape than me. And would you mind helping out my parents too? They're blue-collar workers. No one's ever talked to them about finances before. And the gentleman said, sure, I'd love to help them. And he said, you know, if they do become a client of ours, there's a way you could get paid on that. And I said, really? And he said, would you be interested in finding out more about that? And that's option number 2. A self-employed twin career. The way I get paid would be to go through their certification and licensing process. You need to get educated in some of the areas, in mortgages and insurance and finances and investments. But I thought it would be the financial education I should have gotten a long time ago. Really, we've gotten so much education through the years, even through grade school and high school, that we never use. Certainly we use reading and writing, but I still haven't used my Western European history studying that I did. But you know what we use every day? Money. And where's our money education? And I thought this would be great. This licensing process would be the money education that I've never gotten before. I'd love to do that just for education purposes. So that's what I did. I became a self-employed part-time associate with the company. And as a part-time associate, now I also had positive potential tax advantages of being self-employed that I could take advantage of. And then as I got started with the company, I referred some business here, did some business there, and I made $500, $1,000 there. And what was interesting is we were helping families, making a great difference. And as I helped families, they would refer more people in and more people in. I got to maintain my job, my security, my salary, and benefits, and give this a try on the side. Most companies in this industry don't have a program like that. It's all or nothing, sink or swim, whereas most people end up sinking. In our company, it's not that way. You get to maintain your job and transition over when you're ready. And then step number 3, it took me about 8 months. Now it's not common, it's different for everybody, but for me it took me about 8 months before I was ready to come over full time. And as I came over full time, I became what's most commonly referred to as a business owner. As a business owner, I started to build my own business within the company. I started to attract other agents and associates, and I got supervisory overrides, trail commissions on all money under management, stock options. They have a program. If you qualify for that, you get stock options in Aegon stock. There's renewal commissions available on all insurance products. Bonus pools. If you do well in a month and you qualify, the company has bonus pools where you can earn additional income. And then there's something called the entrepreneurial program. If you were to qualify for that and you spent some time here, you opened up a few offices, you've been here a handful of years, there's a way that you can bundle those offices together in your business and possibly sell it to somebody else in the company. And that's a nice program and opportunity that a lot of companies in this industry don't even offer. And then let's go into compensation. Most companies hide their compensation. We're very proud of ours. When you get to this slide in the presentation, slow down, go through it. Believe it or not, people are usually excited by this point, and they want to know, well, is there money to be made here? This is one of the major questions and major pages where you're going to answer these questions. And as you can see, as a new associate helping out a few families, there's some serious money to be made here. And as you climb the ladder and become a marketing director, and you have other associates that you're helping out, and you maybe open your own office, that number multiplies, and it's a huge amount of compensation for most people. So make sure as you're going through the compensation slide in the overview, you take your time and you go through it in detail. People want to know about this. And then here on the next slide is one of my favorite slides. It talks about recognition. And I take it something like this. I say, how many of you currently have a job, or you've had a job in the not so distant past? And literally everyone raises their hands. And I say, let me ask you, have you ever gone into work early one day, you worked hard all day long, you stayed late and nobody noticed? Has that ever happened to you before? Yeah, it's happened to me too. What happens when you screw up at work? Everybody notices then, right? They're all over your back, they ride you the rest of the day, they use it as leverage to pass you up for promotions, not give you time off, and a lot of work environments are negative. Certainly not all of them, but a lot of them are, which doesn't make sense because we know when you feel good, you do good. Well, why don't our companies try and make us feel good? I have a challenge for you tomorrow. Go up to your boss first thing in the morning, walk right up behind him or her and say, hey, I want you to start making me feel good, and see what happens. Folks, if you don't get fired on the spot and they don't laugh at your face, you probably won't get a straight answer from them. But the reason they're probably not treating you better is because no one ever treated them better, and no one ever treated them better. So literally they're passing on a legacy of criticism, creating a negative work environment because that's what was done onto them. This company, when I ran into it, I'd never seen anything like it before. The recognition is phenomenal. We've got something called the Fast Start Award. Someone can win literally in their first 10 days. I know people who've worked for companies for 20 years and they get like a pen in the mail or something like that. Something almost offensive how little it is after so many years of hard work. Then our company, the further you go, you get pins like this. You've probably seen a lot of people walking around the office with pins on. Well, these all mean something. The further you go, they give you real gold and diamonds, and it makes you feel good. We studied the militaries from around the world, and they all have medallions and stars and stripes and sashes. And when you wear your awards on the outside of your uniform, you feel better. You stand up taller. It empowers the rest of the organization because they want that stuff too. This ring I'm wearing. Now, you'd have to have a ring on to say this, but if you had one of our company rings, you say, look at this ring. It's like a Super Bowl ring. It's like a championship ring. Ladies, there's a woman's version. Don't worry. Looks a lot nicer on your hand. But gentlemen, this is like that huge championship you always dreamt about winning back in high school. Our company gives these out for certain levels of income. We've got lots of people in our company wearing these rings. And the company gives out gold Rolexes. When you become a senior executive vice chairman with our company just takes care of us so much. And then there's travel. Does anybody here in the room like to travel? Can I see by show of hands? Yeah, I never really knew a lot about travel growing up. I grew up in a fairly poor family. As a matter of fact, all of our vacations growing up revolved pretty much around camping. It's a very affordable vacation. A few sticks and a match and you're on vacation for the most part. And I didn't really understand travel until I came to this company. And in my very first year with this company, I won a trip to Hawaii. It was amazing. I didn't even know a contest was going on. I got this call one day, and they said, congratulations, you and a guest won a trip to Hawaii. And I said, I did? What did I do? And they said, well, there's a minimum amount of production, and you qualified. And I said, that's incredible. And I went out there. I brought my dad with me the first year I won. And I wasn't married, and I thought, you know what, we'll do some male bonding. And we went out on this great trip, and the company put us up in the Hyatt Regency in Maui. 5-star resort, one of the Hyatt's finest properties they own in the entire world. I mean, first-class vacation. And the company brought hundreds of other couples, too. We weren't the only winners. You know, one thing that makes a vacation a lot better is when somebody else pays for it. And I'll tell you, I didn't pay for about anything on the trip. And I felt so appreciated to be with a company that took care of its people like that. Not only the compensation that you saw on the prior chart, but the recognition and the trips and the travel, fantastic. Every other year there's a super trip. As a matter of fact, last year we went on a trip to Tahiti. The company rented out an entire cruise ship just for our company, and we sailed all the Tahitian islands. Fabulous vacations, fabulous trips to be won. If you're competitive, I don't know a better place that I would rather work than right here at World Financial Group, and that's why I planted my business flag here. And then finally, there's 3 major reasons people choose World Financial Group as a career. Number 1, a tremendous marketplace exists for our services. Never before in the history of North America has there been a greater need for a financial education than right now today. People are worried. They're in debt worse than they ever been. College costs so much, and there's so many challenges out there, and people are looking for answers. And that's what our company does, is we're out there to help people and try and steer them around the landmines and get them to where they need to be, called financial security. The income earning potential, number 2, as an associate or client is tremendous. We already spoke about that. And then number 3, the opportunity to help others while helping yourself and your family. Now, certainly many of you probably have jobs or have careers that help other people, but some of you don't. And it's a matter of fact, about 1/3 of our lives are going to be spent working somewhere. If you take a look, an 8-hour day of your 24-hour day is going to be spent working somewhere. And what are you doing? I think everyone has it in their heart somewhere that they'd like to help people with that third of their life. So as we're all looking back later on in life, we know that we did something that made a difference. Sometimes you're just in a job. If you don't show up tomorrow, no one even notices. After about a week, they just let you go and replace you with somebody else. And you're not making a contribution to your family, to society, your community with what you're doing currently. This could be a way to do that. Well, here's the point where we ask you to take the next step, folks. I'm going to ask you to do 3 things before you leave here today. Number 1, pick up a business information kit on your way out. We've put some literature together for you, some more detailed information, more statistics about our company. Some of it's just a review of what you saw here today, so that when you get home, in the comfort and convenience of your own home, you have some information to reference. Secondly, there was a card on your seat when you came in. We'd like you to take this time to fill out those cards. Let us know what level of interest you had. Maybe at the lowest level of interest, you just want a free financial strategy, and that's fine with us. A little higher of a level of interest, perhaps you would like to look at possibly becoming affiliated with our firm, becoming one of those part-time referral associates that we talked about. If you're interested in that, let us know. And maybe there's usually 1 or 2 in a room this size that know that this is exactly what they're looking for. They'd love to go and open up offices for themselves within this company. And this is what you've been looking for a long time. And put that down so that we can talk to you right away about our management track and what's involved there. And then last but not least, at the bottom of those cards, it asks for an appointment time. I'm going to ask and make a request of you to set an appointment for the next 24 to 48 hours during the day in our office to have a follow-up appointment and interview. And I know that might not be convenient. Many of you may have jobs, but I have to let you know it's meant to be inconvenient. We want to see how interested you really are. And somebody really wealthy also told me one time that success and convenience don't hang out together. So if convenience is what you're looking for, maybe this isn't for you. But if it's success you're looking for, maybe this is. Folks, I enjoyed sharing the company story with you tonight. I want to challenge you to take action on what you saw here. And the people who invited you here will be in the room in just a moment to help pick up those cards and help you get a kit. I enjoyed sharing the company story with you tonight. Thank you. And that's going to wrap up the presentation. Now, it's very important in conclusion of the overview that everyone who had guests now they come into the room and meet with their guest. It's very important what they say at this point. They don't ask their guests, well, what did you think? Because that gives their guest a chance to say, well, I didn't like it. You don't ask questions that you don't want the answer to. You ask rhetorical questions like, wasn't that great? Good information, wasn't it? Told you you'd like it. Now let's go get a kit. And then it's the person who has the guest's responsibility to bring their guest over and help them get a kit. And then they take that response card, which you can see on the screen. There's a response card that they would have filled out. And make sure now the most important part is that they have set their appointment time within 24 to 48 hours during the day to come on back for their follow-up interview. The reason we need to do that is we need to maintain professionalism. We want them to follow up when the information is fresh in their mind, when our impression of them is fresh in our minds. We want to have a good, intelligent conversation, and that's where the questions are going to be asked. Many times your guest might say, well, can you tell me about this? I have a question about this. And your response is, that's why you need to have your follow-up appointment. That's why you need to meet back with my marketing director. That's your response there, and get them to set the follow-up. You need to do it. If you have the guest, you need to make the push. We can't make the push. We look like pushy salespeople at that point. You who have a guest need to make that push. It's all for naught if you don't get the follow-up appointment, because that's step number 4. These steps are in chronological order. You make a list, you contact people, you invite them to a presentation. The whole entire purpose of the presentation is not to get them to decide whether they're interested or not. It's to get them to decide whether they want more information or not in having a follow-up appointment or not. That's the decision. Are they interested enough to set a follow-up appointment? That's the purpose of a presentation. Now, at the conclusion of the presentation, the reality is whoever has the most guests at presentations the most consistently over the most number of weeks, you'll end up having the most people in your organization and the greatest opportunity for success. If you can't get the people to the office, bring the meeting to the people. Get really good. Even the most brand new people need to perfect this overview that you saw today. The more people you get in front of, the more fluent you'll be, the more comfortable you'll be at giving the presentation. All public speaking, all presentations start out very awkward feeling. The more you do it, the more mechanical it becomes, and then eventually you look like a natural. So folks, I challenge you to go out there and make a lot of presentations and get a lot of people to the office to see our presentations.